American Top 40.
Now, the act of number 3 are Swedish, and they're a Swedish group. And they've hit number 1, but don't bring up that other Swedish group who hit number 1 in the 70s. Ace of Base, don't want to hear the A word. Jenny Berggren of Ace of Base says, I wish I had $1 for every time I had a comment on it. Yes, we're like ABBA, but in a very basic way. But we don't have that kind of harmony sound, and a lot of our music has a reggae beat, which isn't like ABBA. Plus, I think our songs have more, shall we say, substance. Not to put ABBA down or anything. As a kid, I used to dream about being like ABBA because to a little girl, those 2 women in the group were like princesses. But that was just kid dreams. As an adult, I like music with a tougher sound, like our music. Okay, you be the judge. Tougher than ABBA or just different? With their recent number 1, now at number 3, here's Ace of Base and All That She Wants.
Casey's Top 40.
Now we're up to the number 1 smash, The Sign. It's by a Swedish band whose music is such a fusion of unusual sounds that at first their fans thought they were from Africa. It was about 2 years ago that this Swedish quartet was completely unknown. But when they released their first single in Sweden, a song called Wheel of Fortune, they created a big buzz. The sound of the song was complex, partly Europop, partly rap, all sung with an edge reminiscent of reggae star Jimmy Cliff. For some reason, Swedish critics and fans assumed that the members of the group were black. They were described in the press as a hot new African band, and members of the group did nothing to discourage the illusion. For the first 6 months, they didn't send out any pictures, they didn't make any videos, and they never performed live. It wasn't until Wheel of Fortune went to number 1 in Sweden that the group finally made an appearance. And they say that people were certainly surprised at their look. A couple of critics even suggested that some sort of hanky-panky was going on. But as the members of the Swedish group say, quote, by then we were number 1. It didn't matter what we looked like. It was our music they loved, unquote. Since that first Swedish hit 2 years ago, the Swedish group their fans thought was African, the group Ace of Base, has become one of the biggest acts to ever come out of that Scandinavian country.
Casey's Top 40.
I'm Casey Kasem. Well, now we're up to this week's number 1 song in the USA on Casey's Top 40, and it's by a Swedish group whose catchy but seemingly nonsensical name may baffle others, but it makes perfectly good sense to them. For months now, a lot of rock critics have speculated on exactly what their name means. Some say it has to do with card games. Others say it comes from America's national pastime, baseball. And some critics have gone so far as to suggest that it's an obscure drug reference. But the speculation didn't stop there. A couple of writers say the name is a mistranslation of Swedish. And then there are those who say that the group's name doesn't mean anything. It's one of those names that just sounds kind of cool. Well, the members of the group that sings this week's number 1 song recently revealed that none of those guesses are even close to right. They say their name is perfectly logical. You see, to them, their studio is their base. It's the place where they work, where they create, and where they occasionally live. And to them, an ace is someone who's a master, which is their goal in terms of the work they do in their studio. So they picked a name that to them means master of the studio, the name that's on the song that for the second week in a row is the master of the chart. The number 1 song in the USA on Casey's Top 40 is Don't Turn Around by Ace of Base.
American Top 40.
Hey, the Shadow with you. And that brings us to number 1 on American Top 40. It's by a group from Gothenburg, Sweden, who've become the biggest Swedish band in the world, but they told us they're not the biggest band in Sweden. Jenny Berggren said, we are the biggest export, but we sing in English. So at home, we're not big. In Sweden, you have to mix with the right people in Stockholm and be really cool, and we're sort of not. I don't know about that, but they're plenty cool on the chart with their 3rd number 1 in a row, still on top. For a 5th straight week, the number 1 song in America is by Ace of Base. Don't Turn Around.
Casey's Top 40.
I'm Casey Kasem. These are the week's biggest hits from 40 to number 1, and we're counting them down. Dropping 3 notches to number 29, here's Ace of Base, a group from Sweden whose members have become quite rich in recent years. And what have they been spending their newfound fortunes on? Well, singer Jenny Berggren says she recently bought an expensive painting from one of her favorite Swedish artists. And Lynn's sister Jenny has stocked up on expensive makeup and perfumes. They're living what you might call a beautiful life.
Casey's Coast to Coast.